You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan and Kaan.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Orada Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru aksın kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Zuma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. Of course, we're coming off of our first point loss in the Super League, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't expect this to be the greatest hit of all time in terms of episodes. But let's hope that plenty of you are still tuning in. I fully understand if you feel a little bit disappointed after yesterday's result, but we're here to talk you through it, talk you off the ledge perhaps, talk each other off the ledge perhaps, I don't know. It's only 2 points, but you know, after last season, every point you drop is feels like a big loss. Anyway, my name is Kaan. As always, I am joined by my co-host Sinan from New York City. However, today, no Kartal. He is on vacation to Turkey for the next 3.5 weeks. Nice to get a heads up on that, by the way, Kartal. And
that was definitely like, wait, I'm sorry, what? You're gone for 3 weeks?
Yeah, I guess you're not taking part of the podcast then, or what? Yeah. But we've got Yasin filling in for him. So Yasin, welcome to the show. Your first appearance as a full-fledged podcast member, I would say. Because we've done some stuff together, like the rest recently. But this is the first time you're on the main show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay, well, normally I would
happening.
expect it's a great honor. No, welcome to the show, Yasin, and of course, thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And for all of those of you who are new to the show, go and check out the audio version as well if you prefer to listen to the audio version. But of course, video is our preferred format at the moment, or since the last couple of months. Go and check out our Patreon if you want to support us. Go to patreon.com/Beşiktaş podcast and you can get access to a lot of extra content, both video and audio. We have an extra additional VIP audio podcast that is released sometimes multiple times a week, but at least once a week. And we also have a lot of extra video content. For example, on Wednesday on our YouTube channel, our new preview for the Ajax Beşiktaş game, which is on the 26th of September, will premiere on YouTube. However, if you've been a Patreon member, you've been able to watch that episode already on our Patreon page since last week, right after we recorded it with Jordi Yamali. Anyway, that is enough for my plugging. Let's start talking about the games. Guys, I'm going to change up the format a little bit. I'm going to head straight into the lineups. And then, of course, we can get the thoughts on the game. Sinan, would you mind going over the lineups for the match against Trabzonspor?
Yeah, gladly. Sorry, I was just checking our chat, making sure everyone's active, making sure we're not getting any noise complaint. That's a different usage of noise complaint. Anyway, I'll go on. So first of all, we'll talk about Trabzonspor. And of course, a little foreshadowing here. Uğurcan was starting in the goal. And for anyone who's maybe forgotten, he has a tendency to play well against us relative to our rivals. We'll talk about that later. On the back line, they had Savic and Dentsville with Maliero and Eren El Mali on the flanks of their defense. Okay Yukuşlu, Enes Bardi, and João Mandi, which is like Portuguese and French. That's confusing, man. You got to pick one. Edin Visca, Banza, or as I was calling him, Garbanza, during the game. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with garbanzo beans, but yeah, anyway. Orsic on the left side for them. For us, Mert Gunok in the goal, Gabriel Paulista and Felix Udokai on the back line with Masuaku on the left and Jonas Svensson on the right. Al Musrati next to Jedson Fernandez behind Rafa Silva with Rashica on the left side and João Mario on the right side and Ciro Immobile up top for what is about as close to our best 11 as you're going to find at this stage of the season. I think we could all agree. Perhaps, debatably, right? I think Semi Kılıçsoy is, in my opinion, the starting left wing, and I think he would normally be, if not for the fact that, and this is sort of news, he was not 100%. He picked up a little knock during the international break, small groin strain, I think. That's why he didn't feature for the national side, and I'm assuming that's why he didn't start for us, although what do you guys think? Yasin, as our first time podcaster here, do you feel that Rashica is the starting left wing typically, or was this a product of Semi being slightly injured?
I think we have a lot of rotation on the wings. I don't think we have a settled wing pair yet. I think that will come throughout the season. I think we have a lot of wing players. I'm not the biggest head of Rashica. I think I can see a lot of the qualities he has. He's not great at anything, but he's decent enough at stuff. But I think he should be on the bench. That for sure for me. He should be the first man on the bench. He shouldn't be starting for us.
Yeah, ideally, right? But we don't really have good enough wingers, out-and-out wingers. And that's one of the things we tried to address during the transfer window. And I think Angelo Gabriel would have been the perfect fit. And I think, because we were talking about it at the start of the window already, and Kartal was hammering this whole mostly is that we really need a creative winger and we need a Gezal type. But I really think we need more than that. I think we need more dynamic, the more dynamic player, somebody who has speed, somebody who has dribbling ability. And Metin Tekin actually said it on television yesterday, is that Rashica doesn't seem to trust his speed, doesn't seem to have too much faith in his own dribbling ability. I don't know what it is, and I think I've said this a few times already over the last couple of weeks as well. Like, he doesn't take on his man. He is very timid, I feel. He doesn't take a lot of risks. He doesn't have the speed you would expect from someone in his role. I'm not a big fan. He had good periods last season. I think he started off the season well. He had a few assists early on, a good preseason. But I think that all just kind of masks his deficiencies. And I definitely think that he is somebody who is, in a game like this, he's definitely somebody who stands out like as a sore thumb and slows down our game a little bit. Doesn't combine well enough with other players either. Like, sometimes, okay, you can shy away from taking on your man and all that, but then you have to be very on the nose with, picking up your underlap or overlapping winger. Fullback, I should say. I thought Svensson, for example, was brilliant this game, but Rashica didn't make much of an impression on me. João Mario, who made his debut, what did you guys think of his performance? Sinan, let me start with you. Did you like João Mario's performance?
Yeah, I mean, he was all over the pitch, which I think you can expect, right? That's a strength of his. He was coming back and playing defense and supporting our fullbacks at times, and he was just moving centrally into the middle of the park very often. Maybe too much even. I think a lot of that is like it was his first match, right? Perhaps, he was compensating for something he saw out there, and whatever the logic was. I mean, some people in the group are saying he could be more like dedicated to the wing role, or to playing, on the flank more. I don't know exactly why he was moving centrally, but I don't think he had a terrible performance. I think he showed a lot of flashes, I thought. Lots of nice little neat 1-2 touches. I think he had a role to play in the goal, for example, in the build-up to that. One little comment, though, to go back to Rashica before we drop that topic for the day. I feel like Rashica is one of those guys who, like, if he's one of your first guys off the bench, he's a strength for your team. Whereas if he's starting for you, he's like probably your 11th best player on the pitch, and that can sometimes become a weakness. Obviously, he's one of the weaker guys for your starting rotation. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that Semi should start personally, and I think, that's a position where we lack depth, and frankly, it's a position that we have lacked depth for a long time, right? Even when we had Gazelle, because of his being injury prone, we seem to always have. Kind of trouble fielding a proper backup for him. We probably could have been prepared for this for a few years. We, obviously this summer having to recalibrate the whole team, basically get rid of, 22 players, 23, maybe 24 by the end of the summer. There were going to be a lot of holes that we had to fill, and I think it looks like that might be one of them that needed to be filled. A little more presence on the wing, but we'll see. I mean, I still feel like Semi is young enough. Hopefully, he's not dealing with any injuries long term. He should get the bulk of that time anyway, and I think most of us would want him to, given his age and the need for him to develop and to play. And I think opposite him, João Mario should, grow into that position. It's really important. For the whole beginning of the season, I said we have to be patient with our defense. We've yet to see the full back four play together. They finally have gotten some time together, and they're playing well. So now we have to do the same thing with the front line, and we've still perhaps yet to see our starting top, Immobile, Semi, and João Mario playing together. Playing, as much of the 90 minutes as they can together. But so yeah, I think there needs to be a little patience with João Mario, and obviously Rashica, ideally he's not a starter. He's a great backup, I think, because he can play either wing. You could play on the wing back role. He's even played centrally, right, in that 10 role last season. He offers a lot of dynamism, when you need some fresh legs late in the game. But he doesn't offer you much dynamism as just an out-and-out winger. And so that's the hole there. Sorry, that was supposed to be an answer to João Mario, but I went on a few tangents.
He has his performances where I think he's one of the better players on the pitch sometimes, but it's very spotty. Like like I haven't liked his performance for like 3 games now. I think the Lugano games he didn't impress me. I can't remember really in the league if he impressed me at all. I think against Galatasaray he had a decent match, and then against Antalya, I guess. Was it against Antalya? Yeah, I think
there was one match that I thought you were a little harsh on him, but yesterday was definitely not one of those days. He was. I think you could probably argue he was our weakest link yesterday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there wasn't really anyone that was super bad or anything, but
and I wouldn't say he had like a stinker. Yeah, just
yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is I think if you look at our performance, there's a lot of negativity about the 1 point, obviously.
Obviously, because
let me say this. This is probably how I should have started. For me, 1 point in Trabzon is never a negative. And despite, let's just remove the context, right? There's the forest, and then there's the trees. And the forest, with the big picture thing, getting a point in Trabzon is never bad. That's always one of the hardest away matches of the season. You know that you and your rivals are going to drop points, likely on the road, and that's one of those games where you kind of anticipate not even just getting a draw, but potentially getting a loss. They had a new coach. Their fans were filing back into the stadium, because they were excited about their new coach. You could tell very early on the stadium was loud. Our team was sort of buckling under that pressure for a moment. Although I think we pulled it together even before their red card, to be honest. But Trabzon away is always a difficult result to get. So getting a point there, people should definitely not be on the ledge. Let me put that out there. But then beyond that, I actually think there's a lot of positives to take from this performance. We looked good for the most part. We had probably above 75% of the ball throughout the match, and we were knocking on the door the whole time. I think
75 on the noggin. 75%.
That was very good.
Noggin, yeah.
But we were knocking the whole match. We were, probably thinking a little too much about it. Like we were trying to pass it into the back of the net, when we needed just to start getting some shots on target and kind of putting some fear into Uğurcan. He got hot, obviously, which, we'll probably talk about plenty at some point. But so, yeah, like from the Forest perspective, 1 point on the road in Trabzon is actually good. And then from the Trees perspective, the performance was really solid. And it's just a shame that we let that goal in, right after they got the red card. It was kind of like a momentum goal, I think. And then it's a shame that we couldn't just kind of put a couple back behind Uğurcan, just since we were pressing the whole game. So, yeah, I don't think it's time for anyone to be on the ledge. Sorry, that was a long one. Go ahead, Yasin.
Two parts. First of all, about João Mario's debut performance. I actually quite liked a lot of the things he did. A lot of things were very subtle. Sometimes he was putting in a lot of defensive work. He was very in our half, collecting the ball, getting the ball back. I did like him in that free roll almost, where he was part of the pitch. Maybe we need a second winger and he plays on the 10 so he can play more centrally and more in a free position, if that, maybe he can be utilized better there. In terms of the general performance, I thought we played really well, honestly. I didn't think we played badly at all. We played our game plan. We weren't, the Channel factor was a non-factor. We played our game. And it was just unfortunately that Trabzon defended well, and they managed to sneak away with a point. Because I am convinced that 9 times out of 10 that game finishes 3-1. It's as simple as that. It's just we were unlucky that Uğurcan had his one game of the season where he looks like a European goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's true. And it's always against us. It's never against those yellow bastards. Obviously. No, I actually, that's a great point, and I think it's important to mention that. I mean, yeah, 9.5 out of 10 times we're winning that one, especially in that context. Even though, I think they're going to take a lot out of this, having gotten 1 point, being down a man for much of this match, but they really shouldn't take much out of this because they looked very unorganized, not threatening at all. It's a shame we gave them that one goal, and obviously it was on a set piece, so, there's not a ton you can do about it, but, man, like...
You can defend better.
Yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't be conceding.
I didn't analyze that goal much, because, I mean, you got to give credit to Okay Yokuşlu. It was a great header from distance with a lot of power on it, but, no, I think Yasin makes some very good points there, and that... Really, we should have won this one. And when we look at the stats, we're going to see that the XG looks relatively low, and I think that's contributing to some of the negativity that some people have. But then if you also look at those stats, like the XG is like lower than 2, even though it says we missed 3 big chances and that we had a ton of shots on goal.
We had 3 and we missed 2.
Yeah. No, let's
look at those stats.
I think we'll see Fatma. Yeah, let's dig in. So, you're right. 3 big. We missed 2. You're right. But we had 7 shots on target. 22 shots in total. So for me, it's hard to imagine us having. All right, let's just do this. So 75% of the ball. They had 25. We had an XG of 1.43. Not even 1.5 to their 0.21. And we had a 1.43 XG despite having 22 shots, 7 on target, 3 big chances, 2 missed. It feels to me if you have 2 big chances that are missed, that should probably be about at least a 2.0 for XG. So I'm a little confused by the selectivity. My theory that Batmob is outsourcing their stats to some Turkish guy who, maybe is a Galatasaray or a Fener fan. I feel like that's supported by the conservative XG numbers that we're getting. Kaan, you pulled down the stats. Do you know... it's acting up? All right, I'll pull up my own stats. Oh, there we go. But so yeah, we completed 555 passes to their 144. I don't think I've ever seen that kind of a discrepancy. And okay, sure, they were down a man, but I mean, we've seen some very inspired performances from teams this season when they go down a man. This was not one of those from Trabzon. I don't think they should be hanging their hat on anything from this match.
This feels like
144 passes.
This feels like a cup game. This feels like a cup game where we play at home against a lower division side in terms of purely the stats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They committed 17 fouls. We committed 9. Even though we had 3 yellow cards and they only had 2, which, that's mysterious. They had 1 red card, obviously. We were offsides twice to their once. We had 13 corners to their 1. And that's actually significant because it suggests that, in fact, yes, we were in their side of the pitch for so much of this game. We were knocking on the door for so much of this game. We were taking shots, lacking efficiency, obviously, in that regard, and that's another issue entirely. But 13 corners means that, we were really, really knocking. And it's a damn shame we couldn't get at least a second goal, frankly. Yasin, do you want to do the duel stats? I usually hand those over to Kartal.
Sure. I mean, we won basically all the duels. We won the duels on the ground, in the air, on the pitch, in the locker room, whatever. We won all the duels, and we completed more successful dribbles. So, even in terms of the competitive side, man versus man, we dominated Trabzon.
Yeah, I think so too. Kaan, you were maybe arguing, you were debating something with me there. So I had suggested that Trabzon shouldn't be taking much from this match. Did you not agree? Do you think they limited us, Kaan? I don't think they did, man. I mean, Uğurcan did on a personal level, but dude, like, you put that on Trabzon, or
they had
or
a good
you put that
defensive
on
performance.
us? Well, first of all, they were playing like 6-7 men back for much of this match. So, I mean, yeah, of course. And then I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't have been doing that, but that's what they did. Yasin's not showing up, by the way, over there. I don't know.
I didn't want to say, but yeah.
I don't know what's happening to Yasin down there, Kaan. But anyway, I would simply state that, as Yasin said, we would have won this one 9 out of 10 times because, frankly, we should have had at least 3 goals. On top of all those shots, and sure, like, we could have taken even more shots, and I think we could have been a little less selective and deliberative in attack. We would have had a lot more chances, but I don't think that Trabzon was even that effective in shutting us out ultimately, because it wasn't their defense that stopped us from scoring the goals. It was Uğurcan. Simply put, it was individual, frankly, stellar play from Uğurcan. I thought he looked very impressive. I'm not trying to take anything away from what he put out there.
He made 3 really good saves.
And frankly, look, this is what he's supposed to do. He's their best player, right? Like, the problem for Trabzonspor fans, I think, is that he doesn't do it as much as, as he's advertised as per doing it. But I mean, I don't know, Kaan. I wouldn't necessarily agree that they were especially effective. I think it's more on us that we were, it's, as Yasin said, it's our shape, it's the way that we play. We are kind of a deliberative attacking team. We do have a tendency to try to pass into the back of the net. And that's actually what I think a lot of us love about how we play, right? It's very fluent. It's very fluid. It's fun to watch. There's a lot of tiki-taka. Our goal was like Barca 2005, ball pinging around and finding Jetson in the box, and put it away perfectly. But for me, it's more on us that we couldn't get that goal than it is on them. I felt like we were doing everything right except just, I think we were too selective.
I think you're being very
looking for that final.
I think
chance.
you're being very dismissive of their performance, and I think that in turn dismisses our performance as well. I think if you're gonna paint your opposition as they had nothing positive to take away from the game, then, but at the same time, you're saying, well, we should.
Well, I mean, they got a point.
Yeah,
Obviously, they got something positive. It's just not. I just meant their performance didn't really impress me that much.
no, of course not. They're playing,
especially
they're,
even going down 10 men. Because, like I said, Kaan, I mean, we've seen sides respond to going down a man by actually being better for it in some ways, right? Like they kind of use it as motivation. In this case, they really just kind of folded and decided they were going to try to shut us out for.
By the way,
80 minutes.
I'm trying to fix the live chat so that it shows up.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
It's not coming up either.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try and fix it a different way. For the time being.
But so yeah, I guess the reason I'm also suggesting that I don't think they should be too excited by their performance is that, you know, I see a lot of people basically like online referring to this as something of like a master class by Şenol Güneş. And you know, that's what I'm countering here, Kaan. I'm not saying that they have no positives at all in the very literal sense. A point is way more than they deserve, so that's a positive they can take, I suppose. I just mean that I don't think you know, there was no tactical masterpiece at work.
But nobody.
And I think you could actually argue on the other side, like we, at least as far as tactical wherewithal goes, like we at least we're trying to play our game, you know, and I actually in some ways appreciate that, you know, even though, you know, you could have tried to be more desperate in getting that goal, like I think it's important to establish who we are and how we play.
The Abdullah method.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't be too stubborn with it like but yeah, you know, just you got to sometimes play through these scenarios and stick to your guns a little. And I thought in that sense there was some positive for us to take from it tactically.
I more meant when he was at Beşiktaş and he abandoned his tactical style and then went on to win a few games. I meant more that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't agree with what you're saying, Sinan. I just think that you're being way too dismissive of it. I think if you can limit a team like Beşiktaş to three big chances in a game where you're playing with 10 men for 90% of the game, like you can't just say, okay, the goalkeeper had a great game. Yes, of course, he was the man of the match, no question about it. But yeah, like I think you need to give credit as well to the fact that they've limited the pockets of space really effectively. What is one of the things that has been one of our biggest? Can I just for a second?
Yeah. But I just want to say I don't think we only had 3 big chances. But anyway, yeah, go ahead before we let that one slide.
Yeah. It's very difficult to get my thoughts straight, Sinan, when you're always buzzing. But I understand where you're coming from. You're trying, but you need to also understand if you're going to dismiss their performance almost completely, then you're by definition saying we were shit. And I don't think we were necessarily. No, but that's what you're doing. If you're saying they were.
But Kaan, you can't say that I'm saying that when I've literally said the exact opposite. I said I'm impressed by how we maintained our shape and tried to play our game. I just don't think that they earned a point. That's my point. I don't think. I genuinely think we played well enough to get 3 points.
Nobody says, I'm not saying they earned a point. If one team deserved to win this game, it was definitely Beşiktaş. There's no question about that. However, we only created 3 big chances. That is to their credit. Well, what
are the 3 big chances, Kaan? Tell me that. What are the 3 big chances?
You're saying that we had more than 3 big chances. So yeah. I'm trying to just think of which were the big chances then, because you had the Rafa Silva one where he made a big save, then you had the second Rafa Silva where he made a big save, and then you have the goal, because the João Mario shot from outside the box that doesn't count as a big chance. That's not how
I would say that. Remember, right before our first goal, Rafa Silva had a shot from inside the penalty box, and it just sort of trickled wide to the left. And that's not being counted as a big chance, but he had a shot in the box that he just kind of skewed a little wide. There's
two chances from Rafa Silva, one in the first half and one in the second half, that are going to get counted as big chances for sure.
And my point is, I think that was one that could have easily been counted as a big chance.
But how do you know it wasn't counted as a big chance?
Well, I mean, if we do the math on like the goal being one,
yeah, the goal is definitely one because that was
count.
a 100% chance, yeah.
And then you've got, I'm assuming, what was the one that you were talking about that Rafa had missed? The back foot, right?
Obviously, in the second half, yeah, that one for sure. In the first half, I don't even remember exactly which one it was in the first half, but there was one in the first half with Rafa where Uğurcan also... the header, I think it was a header.
Yeah, there was a header, and then there was the one that I said that he'd skewed wide. So now we're already up to 4, maybe 5. And then I think you could probably make the argument that Mucci's chance late in the match
that's not a big chance.
Qualifies because he was just at the edge of the penalty box. He got a good shot in.
That's not a big chance.
Yeah, he could have had more power on it, and then it trickles out, and nobody is there for the rebound.
But that's,
I don't know how one qualifies what a big chance.
Big chances are basically 1-on-1 100% chances, essentially. Like a shot from outside the box or the edge of the box is not considered a big chance. You can also
which is why that's why João Mario's, for example, probably doesn't get counted.
Yeah,
but
I would.
Again, right?
Yeah,
it was a solid shot from distance, forced a pretty acrobatic save. Like, I don't know. We're splitting hairs here, but my point is simply that I'm not criticizing their performance. I think we played really well. And just, it's a little bit of bad luck. It's a little bit of stellar play from their best player. Tactically from our end, just like I said, a little too deliberative, a little too thoughtful with our passing and just not enough killer instinct. But
but if you were a Trabzonspor right now, a Trabzonspor fan right now, you're not going to tell me you wouldn't be happy with that point. Because that's a point.
Oh, I'd be thrilled by it, but I wouldn't feel happy by the performance. Is my point. I'd be thrilled by the point.
You play with 10
but
men,
especially because of how I would feel like I didn't deserve it. Maybe.
Sinan, I actually disagree. If we had a derby against, let's say, Fener, and we went down to 10 men and we grinded out a 1-1 result in this exact same fashion, we would be thrilled with that.
Yeah.
With both the result and we would say. Yeah, but we would call that a fighting performance. We would say that was a fighting performance and we did well.
They should be thrilled. They got a point they didn't deserve. That's what. Of course, I'd be thrilled if we got a point. If we shithoused the point that we didn't deserve, I'd be, at least I'd be very relieved that we didn't fully give away the match. But sure, yeah. But my point isn't that Trabzon fans shouldn't be thrilled by their point.
Can you Can you really say that this was a shithoused point, though, Sinan? Because we didn't do shit
for Trabzon.
We didn't do shit in the last 20 minutes. So
I don't think so. I think we did do enough.
We had
there.
Yeah. Sorry, Yasin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we did quite a number of things. I disagree. It's just that we weren't clinical enough with the chances we created. That's true. But I don't think we were doing nothing at the end. There was still a lot of chances. I think where we really let ourselves down was right after the second half. I think in the middle portion of the game there was a lull there. In my opinion.
We had that big chance for Rafa, I think, coming out of the second half. I don't remember when it was. I think it was between minute 50 and minute 60 or something like that. But genuinely in the second half, I think that one chance for Rafa was the only proper big chance we created. And I think that says something about the performance in a detrimental way, I think. And Giovanni Van Bronckhorst even acknowledged it after the game. He said, yeah, we didn't pass the ball around quick enough, which you need to do against 10 men. When a team goes down to 10 men, you need to be able to make that extra man count. You need to be able to stretch them, and you need to be able to create spaces. And one of the things I thought that Trabzonspor did very effectively was limit the pockets of space available for Rafa, the master of diving into those pockets, to dive into. And that's why I think Rafa, despite the fact that he could have scored 2 goals, didn't have one of his best games. And also, if you look at the default mob ratings, this is the first time Rafa had a 7.5. The first time Rafa had less than an 8 in a game. And obviously these ratings, take them with a massive pinch of salt. And I'm not saying Rafa had a bad game or anything, but I do think that Trabzonspor were relatively effective at neutralizing the threat that is Rafa Silva. And I think that in its own is something they can take away from this game as a net positive. Obviously, they are happy with a point. They didn't play a good game at all. They didn't play a good game in the sense that they're at home, they're against, in a home game you expect something more. But when you're down to 10 men, given the context of the game, when you're down to 10 men after 14 minutes, and you eke out a point, and at the end of the day, you do limit Beşiktaş significantly because we weren't able to mount a final offensive. Like, I feel in this game, for example, if you remember the Trabzon-Fenerbahçe game last season, where the game was stopped multiple times. I don't remember exactly how the scoring proceeding went, but I do remember that towards the end of the game it was 2-2, and somehow Fenerbahçe still managed to force the third goal and get those crucial 3 points. And that is the big difference. And obviously, the context of the game is also very different. That was under Abdullah Avci. This was the first game back for Şenol Güneş. This was the first ever game he coached at the stadium named after him. I don't agree with what Yasin said, is that the Şenol Güneş factor didn't come into play. I think if we play this game against Abdullah Avci, we win it every time. Twice on Sunday, 4-0, 3-0, easy, no problem at all. I think if this game came right before the international break, when Avci was still in charge, we win this with 10 fingers up our nose. So
we win this game no matter what, 9 out of 10 times, even with the setup as it was yesterday. I think 11 versus 11, when you get more space, I think we probably win this game, but because it went down to 10 versus 11, I don't think that was necessarily an advantage for us. Yes, it was an advantage in the sense that we could limit them offensively. They basically didn't do anything after going down to 10 man, other than scoring the goal on a set piece, because they didn't. I don't remember a single time Mert had to make a save. Also in the second half, one of the positives I take away from this game is, in the past, I feel like this is a match where you don't find the goal and then you have the you don't score, they score scenario. And that did not come to fruition at all whatsoever. There wasn't a single time, other than the one time when Simon Banza was rushing at goal and then Urukai had a great interception to prevent him from essentially getting on a one-on-one position with Mert. But other than that, they didn't do anything. And even though they're down to 10 men, that is still an accomplishment, I think, because obviously we didn't go all out, guns blazing. We didn't go full kamikaze mode in the end. But around minute 65, I think, Gio took off Musrati, put on Semi. So we were playing with a midfielder less. We were playing with an extra man up top. So it's not like we didn't take risks to win. Gio definitely wanted to win this game. He wasn't happy with a point, but I do have some question marks with certain substitutions. Like, I was saying before, and I know you agree, Sinan, because I think you were talking about it in our group chat as well. Like, Svensson had a fantastic game, and he takes him off and he puts Onur on. And there were 2 moments, and obviously this is a game where Trabzonspor wasted a lot of time, which is, I don't blame them for it. I would do the same if I were in their position. But there were 2 moments where Onur gets the ball, and one, he wanted to do a cross pass towards, I think, Masuaku, and the ball just flies off into the stands, and that goes out into a goal kick. And with that really poor pass, he essentially gives them a minute of time wasting. And then there was another moment a little later on. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I just remember thinking to myself, Onur had 2 plays since he came on, and I think he lost us about 90 to 120 seconds of play time because he gave them an opportunity to waste more time. And something. Yeah, the bad crowd.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand that. Like, in general, I think Gio's subs have been pretty good this season. Obviously, you have to look at that within the context of the game and what he has available on the bench and all that. But the Onur sub makes zero sense to me. I cannot understand it. Like that just there's no logic behind that. I feel. I don't.
Maybe he wanted to rest Svensson. Like maybe he doesn't want to play him every 90 minutes every game.
The only valid explanation I can think of is if he maybe had a slight pain or something, or if before the game, the doctor said he can only play for 60 minutes, something like that. Didn't hear of anything like that, and I would be surprised if that was the case, given how good Svensson was. But that was a really mind-boggling sub. And then, I feel like it's already coming back. I think I mentioned it last week. We don't have a substitution on the bench, a battering ram for when you need to try and find a goal. And I mentioned this in the past. I think it was actually in our Europa League interview with Jordi Yasin that I may have mentioned it, that I think Weghorst, in terms of profile, would have been the perfect backup striker for Beşiktaş, somebody to put on the pitch. Obviously not in terms of personality, because Weghorst is somebody that always wants to play, wants to be number one, so that wouldn't be good. But in terms of the profile of the player, that is the type of player we really could have needed. I don't think Mustafa fills that void. Mustafa is a very bright young talent, but he's not a tire iron. He's not a battering ram. He has the physique of that, but he doesn't have that experience or that killer instinct. And when you take off Ciro, what was it, minute 675 or something like that? And I'm not saying that taking off Ciro wasn't a logical substitution necessarily, but you have to look at what we have available to us, and I don't think Mustafa brings enough with him for a game like this, where you're going into the last 15 minutes, you need a goal, and there's no space. And yeah, I think this game did show the deficiencies in our squad, and I don't think that's necessarily on the board or anything like that. Like, I know some fans are like, oh, that's because this is on the squad planning and blah and blah and blah. Look, I think if you look at what we did this summer, we had a fantastic squad overhaul. We had a fantastic transfer window. You cannot expect in a single transfer window to go from the worst team performance in the last 25 years and overhaul a squad completely, that you're going to have the perfect starting lineup and on top of that a perfect bench. I don't think you can expect that realistically. I don't think the holes in our squad are as big as people are making out. But a good backup striker, a good, rapid, skilled...
Fallback.
No, I was going to say winger. A good, rapid, skilled winger, and then a good fullback, rotation fullback. That is, I think, 3 positions that we really ideally would have filled, but obviously we have the form situation and all that. But yeah, what can you say?
Yeah, I think, honestly, people are... we should have expected this to be a transition year. Like, I know we had a great summer, but you don't build Rome in a day. You don't build a title-winning squad, especially with Fener spending the money they do and Gala spending the money they do. They didn't spend it as wisely as they could have, but they still spend a lot of money, and they still have deeper squads than we do ultimately.
And they needed a lot less. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are still in an uphill battle, and I think fans need to realize that we are still in a transition phase, and I think Gio is a great coach for that, because he can coach younger players, for example. That's the gamble with giving young players chances, that they're not always going to have great performances. Like Mustafa, we need to give him time. We need to give him a chance to develop if we want to give him a chance to succeed. Same with, for example, Terzi. There are young players here who deserve some minutes, but obviously the gamble is that if you give a young player a chance, that they're not always going to do greatly.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the lack of experience. So I hope that the fans can give the board and the coaching staff and the players a bit of leeway. That's just my hope.
I mean,
I agree. Yes, I think it's a good point, Yasin, especially because, right, like we as a fan base tend to take pride in playing young guys, right, and developing our talent, especially more than our rivals. And yeah, that's the cost of doing it, right? That's the cost of sort of reserving a rotation spot for younger players. Is that sometimes, especially when you need a goal late in the match and it's tied, or if you're down a goal, even worse. Yeah, that's where that kind of can bite you in the ass a little, right? And obviously we're not in a position to have like a backup foreign striker. I mean, we could be if we didn't have like 3 backup foreign central midfielders, but again, that's a product of previous boards, bad decision making, kind of insufficient roster planning, from the previous, what's the word?
Regime.
Group. Regime. That's exactly what I was looking for. But so yeah, like Yasin says, right? It's not going to happen overnight. We had so many changes to be made that you couldn't expect it all to be done. And especially looking at our rivals, they had so few really to make. And you could probably make the argument that they maybe botched those few changes they did need, and maybe didn't quite complete the moves they did, or got rid of things that they couldn't fully replace. That's a whole other conversation. But from our perspective, it's hard to say that it was an incomplete summer given how much we did and how much needed to be done. I think it's probably more realistic to say that we couldn't have done everything we needed to in the one transfer window. And one other point, as far as, like, for example, replacing Svensson and bringing on Semi and Mustafa, like, I'm fairly certain that from Gio's perspective, he saw us dominating for the most part, getting a ton of shots, not necessarily on target, which is the problem. And he thought, you know what, I'm going to bring fresh legs in, especially on the flanks, right? Like, we don't want to suffer from any fatigue. They are man down. They're defending in the back. If we can bring on some energy, right, maybe one of these, like, 22 shots that we have off target or whatever it is, we could just get a couple of them on target. We can shithouse a goal, just by having a little bit more energy than they have, having a little bit more, variability, having one extra player and all that, obviously. And so I think it made sense to want those fresh legs out there late in the game. The problem is, who are those fresh legs, right? Like, if you're going to replace Svensson because you want pace on the flank now late in the game, who are you going to put in, right? Unfortunately, the answer to that is Onur Bulut. And I think, again, right, like, let's say Rashica comes in off the bench. He could be a late, you put him in as a wing back when you're up a man and you want, like, energy on the flank or something. So sure, Rashica can play right wing back. You can take Svensson off. But Onur Bulut, so many times last season you'd play Onur Bulut and it was like, okay, now we're playing with like 10 men. It's like we're a man down now because we're playing with this inept guy. And sadly, we are all hoping maybe he could flip it, turn it around, and make something of this season, a second chance. We've been given him a pay raise.
It's
with that hope.
difficult under these circumstances, I think, to come on as a substitute in a game where you're already struggling to create, to find space. I think it's difficult and a little bit of an unthankful job for a player like Onur to have to come on and try and maybe force something. But that's the problem, right? We didn't have the substitutions that could really have much of an impact. I think Simi is the only one from the guys that came on, and maybe Mucci to an extent, that had a somewhat positive impact. I think I would have left Chiro on. I think I would have left Svensson on. Yeah, Chiro and Svensson, I think you just leave them on and you let them play the full 90 and you hope you find something. Because, even though Chiro wasn't having a fantastic game, he is still so intelligent. He's able to find something, maybe some space, create space for other players. Because I also had the impression once Chiro came off, we didn't really see much of Rafa anymore either, like in the box. And I think Chiro, despite the fact that maybe he doesn't play the best game, he is still somebody that he's going to attract 2 to 3 defenders. And that's going to create space for other players. Anyway, there were 2 controversial positions. Obviously, three, I guess. Let's talk about that red card first. Yeah, guys, this is the second time already this season that VAR had to intervene because somebody decides to try and break Rafa's legs. We're 4 games into the Super League season. This is the second red card conceded to an opponent on Rafa. And like this isn't like Musrati last season against Fener, where you're late or whatever. This is a deliberate, malicious tackle from behind, no chance to get the ball whatsoever. The only intention there is to stop Rafa from taking the ball and going up the pitch. And yeah, I don't know. I cannot remember. I've been watching Turkish football for more than 20 years. I don't remember, and obviously not a lot of games yet, only 4 matches. I honestly don't remember a single player that has ever been this maliciously targeted by the opposition, and like it's like they're going out of their way to try and injure the guy. And this referee, the previous one, who was also really shit, by the way, against Antalya, but at least he gave a card. This ref didn't even give a yellow. He had to be called over to VAR to give a red card. This motherfucker didn't even give a yellow card in first instance. And I'm gonna add a little bit of grease to the fire there. We have, I believe, 51 fouls this season in 4 games. And we have 12 yellow cards. We have the same amount of fouls as Galatasaray have in 4 games. Galatasaray have 1 yellow card. We have 12. We get a yellow card every 3 fouls or something. Let me do a quick calculation here, because I'm up. Every 4 fouls and 25th, so every 4.25 fouls, Beşiktaş get a card. Galatasaray get a yellow card every 51 fouls. Fenerbahce have something like 76 fouls, but they have a game more. So 76 divided by 8, because that's how many yellow cards they have. So every 9.5 fouls they commit, they get a yellow. Now, yesterday Masuaku got his 3rd yellow card of the season. And I think it was the first time that he actually deserved to be booked. Because he stepped on somebody's foot. And that's a yellow. It's a normal football contact, but it's a yellow card. And that's always a yellow. Some people, some yellows, of course, calling out on Twitter and then the likes for a red card. I was very annoyed with someone I know who's a Galatasaray fan, and he was like, "Oh, Beşiktaş can't complain about this referee. That could have easily been a red card." And I was so pissed off still about the assault on Rafa, because I was like, "Are you fucking serious right now? You think that's a red?" And it just goes beyond my comprehension, ability to comprehend. But guys, do you guys remember? Sinan, you'll definitely remember. I'm sure you as well, Yasin. The previous 2 yellow cards Masuaku got this season. Do you guys remember? What?
Yeah, one of them was for breathing.
The first one,
breathing to the left.
The first one was against Samsun on match day 1 for a foul.
He just walked down to the
where he's just chasing down a guy. He doesn't clip him. He doesn't do anything. Guy goes down because he feels Masuaku's breath in his neck, and he gets a yellow. And the second one was, I think, on match day 2, I guess, when he had just come back from his wife giving birth to their child, and he came on as a substitute. And he was on the pitch for about 5 seconds. He goes up for a header, and I think he maybe he heads the ball, and I think he maybe heads into the back of the other player's head, and he gets a yellow card. Since when's that yellow? And yeah, we get these ridiculous yellow cards. I don't understand. We are the second most penalized team in the league. We have the second highest amount of cards in the league, and we have the lowest amount of fouls. Make it make sense.
The problem is we can complain about the ref situation all we want, but as long as the board isn't petitioning the TFF and making a big fuss about it, it's not really going to change. We have to basically rise above the hate of the referees. If we want to be this conspiratorial and say the TFF and the refs are all
but
together.
it's not conspiratorial, Yasin. The proof is in the pudding.
Sure, but
you can look two seasons of football, and Galatasaray have 1 red card. Now, okay, that's something you can probably explain. But also last season, Galatasaray and Trabzonspor lowest amount of yellow cards in the league. This season, again, 4 games, 1 yellow card. You can't the situation where Masuaku gets a yellow. That situation happens at least once per game. You can't tell me that a Galatasaray player hasn't accidentally stood on another guy's foot in 4 games. Like I didn't,
and they won't call. They haven't called it.
I have.
No,
yeah.
it's
Go ahead, Sinan. Sorry.
Look, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy, right? There's no theorizing necessary. It's clearly Galatasaray is either giving money, Fener as well. I mean, there's lobbies. Mourinho is already working the press about how certain things can't be called because Galatasaray doesn't get those calls. I mean, it's to reiterate what Yasin was saying, I think it's just that it's a constant, right? Like you almost have to assume the refs are out to get us and that there's gonna be some fuckery. And here we are, as usual. Yeah. And frankly, like yesterday was pretty bad, actually. This ref was terrible, and I think you can. At first, it was like, okay, they have a new coach. The stadium is vibrant. The ref is sort of like playing to the crowd, but like you can do that 5 times maybe. Early in a game or something, and like at some point you've got to flip the switch and just like start calling it right.
I mean, you can't.
This isn't wrestling.
You can't.
The
exactly.
referee is not working for the crowd.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying realistically, right? If you want to like minimize chaos or something, you can do it if that's your game, but you've got to at some point. It can't be too egregious on the one end, and fair enough, he gave the red card, which was more than obvious. I mean, it was shady that he even had to. It was shady he even had to go to VAR, and even shadier that after VAR looked at it, he had to go and watch the monitor. I think that's where the booth should say straight up, don't. You're riling up the crowd even more by delaying this. It's a red card. Just call the fucking card. Just go back and play, get the game rolling again. Like you're just sort of like gassing up the crowd at this point. And that's kind of what happened there with that. And then he sort of played a little bit more to the crowd, to compensate, which... but so then it ends up like what starts out as like playing to the crowd minimally ends up with like an entire half essentially thrown away to bad refereeing, poor decision making, allowing really physical play on one end, not allowing it on the other end. It was just inconsistent. I mean, this new generation of refs, I think they tried to institute that like retirement age thing to kind of ensure that there would be new names and faces so that people wouldn't associate some of these old problems with the old faces, but like it's not gotten any better whatsoever. And so, what I think Kaan is suggesting, I mean, this, and I think, I mean, it's.
I know you don't. I know you don't watch Turkish television at all, Sinan, but I'm sure you remember Firat Aydınus, right? Referee.
Yeah, sure.
So he literally said, and look, I understand these former referees. They thrive on controversy. They're paid to say outrageous things sometimes. But he's not necessarily the most controversial one there's around. He's not Ahmet Şakar. He's not Erman Toroğlu. So, like, and he said about this cards discrepancy. He said, sorry. He said the referees must be instructed not to give Galatasaray cards. And then I think to myself, this guy retired like what, 3 years ago? I think actually his last game was our match against Göztepe when we won the league. If you remember, that was his last match, if I remember correctly. And like this guy retired, so like what, 3 years ago? Like to me, somebody who quit that recently, saying that shows, it doesn't prove it, but it strongly indicates that these are instructions his generation of referees got. Because if he is that convinced that that's the case, that referees are told not to card Galatasaray, then that's something he probably had in his career. So I
mean, let's not forget. Remember, there was that sort of viral clip that went around where like the Scottish consultant was like yelling at our refs for making silly decisions, and like one of the refs they had their like login name. It was like Aslan, 734 or something. I mean, I made up the numbers, but I mean, the slant. I mean, look. On the one hand, it makes a degree of sense. I've seen some pretty outlandish numbers as far as. I mean, Galatasaray has the most fans in the country, right? And like statistically speaking, if you meet a Turk, but you're probably a Galatasaray
But that
fan,
shouldn't matter, right? Like that shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't. But I just mean, the slant culturally, nationally exists. But so the TFF, because of that, if anything, it should be something that they very consciously counteract, right? That they're working, to ensure that there's some modicum of objectivity.
Yeah.
And frankly, I mean, I'm a fan of foreign refs. I feel like we should do like a ref exchange every season with a different country and like, bring in a new brand. Cause like we shouldn't be comfortable with certain refs calling certain, like we should just know the rules of football. And it probably hurts us internationally, like in Europe and maybe even the national team, that we're kind of refereed in a different way to different standards. To the extent that it changes the game, right? Like it's a different brand of football based on how the refs allow it. Calling lots of ticky-tack fouls sometimes, and then for some teams it seems like they can do no wrong. And I've noticed there's more of a bent towards allowing physicality, which I appreciate. But then it's got to be consistent, right? You can't call bullshit fouls when it's like convenient because you hear the crowd going crazy or someone's coaching for the first time. Like you can't play these games. Certainly not over 90 minutes, right? Like it's just.
The thing is,
you shouldn't indulge that to begin with. Like there's no excuse to play to the crowd. Like as a referee, like you just need to call it down the middle. You can't be making different decisions based on the crowd reaction or how passionate the home crowd is.
I mean, if anything, it should be the opposite. You should be seeking to calm the crowd down regarding, whining and complaining about referee. You should be trying to make a point that like, no, whatever you guys are yelling at me about, that's not going to impact. In fact, I'm going to call an extra foul just to sort of make a point.
No, you can't do that either, because I feel like that's
not like a consequential one, right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's what they do. Like I've said this many times before. Like these new refs, I always feel like they're out to make a rep and their names against us in our home games, because it feels like when I watch Galatasaray, especially Galatasaray, but referees, especially these new guys, but referees in general are always very timid, very careful. They don't want to give easy yellows. They don't want to give yellows at all. They don't want to give fouls. They want to be very careful about what they do. And when they come to our stadium, I feel like they're out to prove a point on the other end of the spectrum, where they're like, "Oh, I'm in charge here. Limelight on me. Here's a yellow. You dare to whatever, make a gesture or what, I don't know." But like, and it's not like, look, Yasin, I know you watch.
But the point I was trying to make earlier is that we have a coach that everyone describes as gentlemanly, that doesn't want to cause controversy. We have a board that is very much about mutual agreement with our rivals, and we're trying to do it the right way, this, that, and the other. All I'm saying is that we can complain about the referees all we want. It's not going to change because neither the coach nor the board will scoop down to that level that a Mourinho will. Galatasaray doesn't need to because it's TFF Saray. I always knew that. It's, to me, But anyway, that's besides the point. I just don't think there's any point in complaining about the referees because our board and our coach are just going to not accept it, but work around it.
But yes,
That's the way I see it.
You watch a lot of. You've been watching a lot of our rivals and Galatasaray, for example. You've been watching their games this season, right? But let me ask you a question: does Beşiktaş play particularly more intense in the terms of falls, aggression? I mean, yes, we play a higher tempo, we play higher press, we play better press. So in that regard, we play more intense. But it's not like we make a lot of fouls. I mean, like, it's not like we do anything that they don't do, right? Like, how can you possibly explain the discrepancy of 12 versus 1 with the exact same amount of fouls? We have 12 cards, they have 1. Now look, if they have 4 or 5 and we have 12, I'm not gonna say anything because we've had at least 4 or 5 yellows that are bullshit calls and aren't yellow cards. So I can perfectly, like, for example, Fener have 8 yellows in 76 games, in 76 falls, sorry. That's, yeah, I can imagine that being roughly correct. Like, I don't have an issue with accepting that. But 1 yellow in 51 falls. Like, you don't even need to see the matches. 51 falls. If one guy makes 4 little falls that aren't necessarily yellow cards, if he makes his 4th, you give him a yellow because he's being, consistently annoying and falling. Like, you have certain falls where you give a yellow as soon as he does it because the fall itself warrants a yellow, and then you have the accumulation of little falls. If you do 2, 3, 4 falls, you get a yellow card because referee warns you after the first or the second, and then on the third you get the yellow. That's how usually a referee does it. And they only give you a yellow on the first fall if it warrants it. If it's, a professional fall, you pull someone down, whatever. Exactly. But so Yasin, do you see a big difference there? Like, do Galatasaray play this much more gentlemanly? Do they limit the amounts of falls? Like, when I think of Galatasaray, all I can think of is Barış Alper Yılmaz going like BAM into a guy.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Look, I've watched most Galatasaray games this season, unfortunately, but their games flow a lot better as well because the referee doesn't really do much. So the games flow a lot better in that sense.
Yeah, they win the ball.
I
and
don't
the ref
disagree with you, Kaan.
They win the ball back, and the ref doesn't call a fall. We win the ball back. Fall.
Yeah, and that just to reiterate, I wasn't saying a ref should be like influenced by a crowd so much as how they ref can be like, a lot of refs want to allow physicality, so they allow small fouls and they don't call them. Perhaps if the crowd has the game ratcheted up and people are playing very emotively and physically, perhaps then you do call like actual fouls, right? But you actually call the smaller ones just to sort of get the players in control or, whatever it might be, tone down aggression and fighting, but it seems like Galatasaray, where their stadium is pretty loud sometimes, but there's never that approach to their games. Whereas for us, our stadium tends to be pretty loud, and they're always sort of imposing that type of rule on us. Like, we've got to calm this down. It's getting too. They don't seem to have that mentality about our rivals for starters. But then also, right, like there's a point where you've made your point. You've rest the game a certain way to sort of like control the tempo or to ratchet things down, and you've either succeeded or not. But now you've got to just ref the game properly, and you can't keep playing these games. And it just feels like we're on the receiving end of a lot of tomfoolery with the refs, with that mentality. And it sucks. And as you're saying, Yasin, yeah, it does, right? Like if you allow Galatasaray to play their game and you don't call those fouls and you don't apply that same logic of crowd control, aggression control, whatever to them, you're essentially allowing them to get into a flow, and so they'll score like 5 goals against Rize or something like that. And the only reason Beşiktaş might not be able to score 5 goals against Rize whenever we play them will be probably because the ref won't allow it, right? And there were actually a number of times yesterday I noticed, especially in the second half, like 3 late in the game, where we were countering, we were moving quickly. It looked like we were kind of getting into the position to maybe put some pressure on them, and the ref blew the whistle for us. Like, they committed a foul on us. The ref blows the whistle, doesn't let us play on with advantage.
Give an advantage, yeah.
And so we're suddenly being stopped in the middle of where we're like advancing. There was one, it was ridiculous. Like, we were in there, like almost in the penalty box, and then Banza was freaking lying around on the other side of the pitch, and he blows the whistle to let the man like recover. Dude, there was no foul on the play whatsoever. They didn't call it, so obviously there was no foul. Banza's laying around trying to waste time, and you're gonna let him? Like, what the hell is that? And they didn't give them the ball or anything. He just like the extent to which referees allow
if a player stays
other
down
teams to play that game
long enough, they kind of have to, because they have to allow for.
Well, in context though, right? Because then you can't just like lay there when the other team's about to score on you. Because that's what happened. He was laying at midfield. The ball was literally on the other side of the pitch. He's a striker, so he's bound to kind of be up there anyway.
There were multiple occasions where Banza stayed down and we were attacking, and I do have to give him credit. He let us attack for a while, and I think until we like passed it maybe back a little bit or something, or like the play was over, then he would stop and go. I didn't think he was, I feel like I've gone on a massive rant on the refs. I don't necessarily think yesterday was terrible. Like, look, I think it was a scandal that he didn't give a card at least for the fall from Visca on Rafa. I think the yellow card that Musrati got was bullshit. That was just Simon Banza acting like he got hit in the face when in reality there was no contact whatsoever. Like, there were some mistakes there. But I don't think the referee yesterday was the problem. I don't think he was necessarily terrible. I just think that there's a systematic issue where we get a lot of easy cards, we get a lot of cards. Galatasaray on the other hand don't. For example, both Musrati and Masuaku are already on 3 yellow cards. That means that if they get a next yellow, they miss a game. And both Musrati and Masuaku have been victim, I'm going to call it, of ridiculous yellows. Like I said, yesterday Musrati had a phantom card. I'll call it that. A yellow card for something that wasn't even a foul. And Masuaku has 3 yellows, and 2 of those were also for phantom cards. Yesterday's card was 100% deserved. He deserved to get that card. I have no complaint about that. The previous 2 yellow cards he's gotten this season, I've ranted on both of them, both on the Samsun episode, and I guess the other one was against, I want to say Antalya, but I'm not 100% sure, but I've ranted on both of them. So there's a systematic issue, because there's 36 games in this season. We are going to inevitably lose players to suspensions. Everyone does. Ultimately, everyone does. But we are going to get maybe 4 times as many suspensions as Galatasaray are going to get at this rate. Like I said, we already have 2 starters on the verge of missing a game. And over the past decade or so, how many times has it happened to us that we missed a very important player due to a yellow card suspension right before a big derby against either Galatasaray or Fenerbahce? Talisca, Atiba, Jetson, it's happened so many times. When I can't remember the last time Galatasaray or Fenerbahce missed a key player due to a yellow card suspension against us. Can't remember it. Don't think it. I obviously it's happened, but it feels like it's never happened before, And this is not just an issue of this season. This is a systematic issue. This is the same thing as I highlighted with the penalties. If you remember when I went down the rabbit hole and looked at the last 40 years in the Turkish Super League, and the discrepancy of penalties is massive. Beşiktaş are over 60 penalties behind on both Galatasaray and Fenerbahce in the top flight in the Super League. We are the second most successful club in the Super League in those 40 years. And somehow we have by far the least penalties out of those three. Like there's a systematic discrepancy there. There's a systematic discrepancy in cards. And I think Feas Uçar even said after the game yesterday, this is not just an issue of this time, this is an issue of all times. Anyway, enough about that. I want to talk about the penalty positions.
Let's look at the positive. Let's look at the positive, Kaan. That just proves that if the referees were fair to us, we'd be the most successful club in this country. You know?
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that either, but maybe. But let's talk about the penalty positions,
What's
guys.
the story with Enes Bardi? How did Bardi get a yellow card? Do you guys remember at the end of the half?
I don't remember.
Because it was like 2 minutes after Al Musrati. I don't remember. I know that the second yellow card for them was Uğurcan for time wasting.
Yeah.
Late in the match, which, I mean, sorry, Kaan, I don't.
No,
I
it's fine,
feel like we're disagreeing. We're disagreeing a ton this episode, but
That's fine.
honestly, I thought yesterday's refereeing performance was terrible, and like I wasn't really.
No, I'm not saying he was
much.
good, but I don't want to blame the ref for us losing points. I don't think that had anything to do with it, unless of course, if you're gonna if you're gonna answer my next question with, should we have had a penalty? And there's two positions.
Well, that was my asterisk on how it didn't affect the game. But then also, they committed 17 fouls, on the books, and that was letting them get away with stuff after their red card, and kind of they didn't want to, the ref didn't want to overdo it, I guess, but he let them get away with a lot right after their card, and then still they had 17 to R9, and
we had more
just
cards.
Uğurcan for time wasting, right? There's no way if they commit 17 fouls, they have 11 players on the pitch. Someone committed multiple fouls and didn't get a card for that. So it's just worth noting that this ref was selective. It was selective.
Yeah, to an extent, but I don't think it necessarily impacted the final score that much, other than maybe these potential positions for the penalties, and these were both at 1-1. These penalty positions. The first one is Savic wrapping around Immobile, who's getting the ball in the box, and he's holding him, and it looks like he's pulling him down. I don't know what you guys thought about that position. Let's start with Yasin.
I don't think that was. It's a 50-50 one, so I'm not gonna be too mad about it. It wasn't a clear-cut penalty to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna, waste a lot of thought on that.
Yeah. What about
it could have gone either way.
What about you, Sinan? Did you think it was a penalty?
It was. I think fairly objectively it was. Whether or not you call it is another question. I think, just given that they'd had the red card not long prior, I think perhaps he's trying to be even-handed and turn, I would say it's more 55-45 or 60-40, in our favor. But, he was trying to be, quote-unquote even-handed, and I think that probably influenced why he didn't give us the benefit of the doubt. You think we get that at 11 versus 11? I don't think so.
Maybe.
It depends, if Cheeto makes a bigger meal out of it, too. He was very calm about it. One thing that made me sad about it is it feels like Cheeto Immobile is getting used to getting fouled and not getting calls, and he's almost just accepting it. He probably could have made a big meal out of that and been like, "Hey, what the hell?" and maybe demanded a VAR review or something.
But you can't.
It's fine that he didn't. It's fine that he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, demand, right? As they do.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it probably was a penalty, but it might have been soft if they'd given it.
I don't think it's a penalty, but I do think you need to look at it within the context of the league. In week 1, match day 1, Galatasaray against Hatay. Galatasaray are in 1-0 behind 10 minutes before full time, and they get a really soft penalty. I think if that is a penalty, then this is a penalty. And for the record, I don't think this is a penalty. I don't think the Galatasaray one was a penalty either. But that is, again, the discrepancy in this league, the even playing field, or the lack thereof. One team gets penalties for very soft contact. The other teams don't. And look, I've wholeheartedly agree with the Scottish expert. I forget his name. What's his name again? I don't know, remember, but he's the guy that
from that viral video.
That is giving the seminars to the Turkish referees. I 100% agree with him. No soft penalties, no soft red cards, no soft yellow cards, no soft anything. It needs to be clear. I don't think this is a penalty. I think, yes, Savic is holding him. He makes a bit of a pulling motion. I do think you can very clearly tell in the replay that Immobile does make a little bit of a meal out of it. He does kind of theatrically throw himself down. I think he definitely... I don't think this is a penalty. Now there's the second position late in the game. I want to say maybe 80th minute or something like that. Because Immobile was already out at that point. But there's Masuaku on the left-hand side who puts the ball past the defender. It's a bit of an elephant's touch, I want to say. I think that ball, I think he'll struggle to keep that in. I felt the player went for a body check. Because I think you made the argument, Sinan, but isn't Masuaku kind of looking for the fall there? And I really didn't.
No, I didn't. That wasn't me. That was Yusuf.
Ah, it might have been Yusuf. Okay.
No, I thought it was a foul.
Yeah.
I thought it was a foul.
I think again, it's soft, but I think that one is more a penalty than the first one. And if you remember last season in the 90th minutes at home against Pendik, Masuaku does essentially the same, less, and we get a penalty against and they score 1-1 and the game finishes it as a draw. So we've literally had penalties given against us for less than this. Again, I think it's a little it's this one for me is more a 50-50. I think the first one for me that's not a penalty. The second one for me that's kind of a 50-50. I still think it's kind of teetering on the border of soft, mainly because the touch is not great long, and I don't think he keeps it in otherwise. I think if that touch is better and he has a very realistic chance to play the ball and to put in a cross or whatever, then to me it's 100% a penalty. I think the touch goes into it. However, like earlier on the day, actually, Fenerbahce got a penalty where Sam Maximin cuts back a pass in the box, and the ball was gone already. He already cut it back, and then the defender steps on his foot, similar to Masuaku's yellow card, actually. Now, I think, yes, that's a foul. I think Masuaku's position is also a foul. Probably because there's stud contact, that's more a penalty because of that. More a foul because I think the Masuaku situation, probably if that happens in the middle of the park, referee will probably just say, physical duel, whatever. Because in the second one, studs are involved. I think that's a foul anywhere on the pitch. But still, I kind of do feel like in both situations, it isn't necessarily a dangerous attack, but yeah. By the way, guys, in the comments, also let us know what you thought about the Immobile and about the Masuaku positions, if it was a penalty or not. Yasin, what did you think of the second one for Masuaku? Did you think that was a penalty?
No. I think both were... I said previously 50-50. I would say, like, if I was neutral at it, like 30-70. Like, if those positions were called for another club, I would probably call them soft.
Yeah.
So I don't think the penalties really matter. Or those supposed penalties.
Yeah. Sinan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a foul. Again, it's a penalty versus a foul, right? Is a whole conversation unto itself, because I think, like, the Immobile thing too, right? Like, if it happens on a free kick, I can see the ref like blowing the whistle and separating them or something, if there's that kind of a pull down. But obviously, once you're in the box, that's not going to be a call. And I think the same thing with that tackle on Masuaku. I think he does reach that ball if he's
maybe.
not clipped.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And it's not going to be pretty. He probably has to slide in and like try to center it, and Uğurcan's pretty on fire at that point, so he just probably snags it. But at the same time, that's not the ref's job to sort of like game out. He's supposed to just call what he sees. That said, I mean, I don't agree with Yasin that it's like 30-70 through the neutral. I think these are pretty objectively fouls. It's just, are these fouls you call a penalty for? And I understand why the ref wouldn't, I suppose. They're slightly south. Although that second one on Masuaku, I thought, I mean, he kicks his knee out. You know, one thing I hate so much about where refereeing is today, you know, in general, the way that like the handball became this obscure, like, what is this a handball or not? And like, is there intention? Is his hand here or is it there? Is it close to his body? Is it naturally close to his body? Or, you know, it's become so freaking subjective essentially that like it's meaningless to me. Like when I see a handball in the box nowadays, I just sort of pull back and I'm like, let me just wait for the result because I don't know what this means anymore. And I feel like we're starting to see that to some extent with how we differentiate between what would be a foul versus what we call as a penalty. And I think, you know, we're kind of like putting penalties on this platform where it's like they have to be so egregious because the result of calling that foul is so much more, you know, impactful, obviously, on a match's outcome. But I don't, you know, part of me wonders if we're not making it a little too abstract, because I do feel like when you kick a guy's knee out and he trips and he can't move forward onto the ball that he's dribbling with, it's, you know, it's a foul. I don't think like Masuaku didn't like lean into it, right? He just kind of took a foot to his knee as he's running. So, you know, I don't know. I definitely, I know why we make it harder to call a penalty than we do any other foul, right? Like it's fairly obvious. It's just, you know, it feels like now there's so much more of a gray zone than there used to be. Because it's like,
I think if you get this penalty called against you, I don't think you're angry at the ref. I think you're angry at the defender. I think you're angry at the defender for biting. Because
and I'm sure, I bet 90% of Trabzon fans saw that and they're like, oh, you fucking idiot, why'd you do that? It's like, oh, thank God they didn't call it. You know what I mean? Like, I would have no doubt. Because if we saw one of our defenders do that, right, that's probably what we would do. Like, oh, why do you even
if
like,
Masuaku does that, Salih is going crazy in our group chat.
Exactly. Yeah, they're shitting on him. He's the worst player of all time, right? Like, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's sort of a position. Like that is. When I watch Galatasaray games, I always feel like don't give the referee an excuse because he will point to the spot if they're in a precarious position and they need it late in a game. He will point, and that is exactly what happened against Hatay. Because that was not a penalty. That was exactly what this kind of was to me. That was giving the opportunity to a referee to hand the 3 points to a team of it, or in this regard to in that certain instance to prevent the defeat. And I think if this is Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, maybe not Fener, I don't know. Like Fener got a lot of penalties last season. They got a lot of soft ones, like the Kasım Pasha one. That was a really ridiculous one. Like they both really got those. Like they got bailout penalties last season. Fener had probably more so than Galatasaray. Galatasaray got that then this season against Hatay, the bailout penalty. I feel like if we would have gotten that, it would have kind of been like a bailout penalty. If that makes sense. But we don't get those. And I think that's the biggest. I think that is the biggest issue. Why what you were saying, Sinan, where we. Like, it's hard for fans to still understand what's a penalty and what's not a penalty anymore because the standard is different for how many teams are in the league now? 19, I think. So 17 out of 19 teams have a certain standard, and then 2 teams have a different standard. And that's what it was like the last season, and that's still what it's like this season. So far, I think Fener less so, although the penalty they got against against Göztepe was controversial.
Questionable.
Was actually probably comparable to this. So
yeah, I haven't seen Fener much this season for some reason, but I've seen in our group chat a lot of claims of soft penalty calls for them so far
mainly
this
last
season.
season.
So,
I think
I can't corroborate.
They haven't had
but
that many this season, but they got a lot of soft.
wasn't there one yesterday? People were kind of like, huh.
Yesterday,
sort of
actually, they should have gotten one earlier in the game.
Oh, was it the opposite?
Yeah,
I remember
they actually,
there was some talk
so,
of fan.
so look, if you're a Fener fan, if you're a Gala fan, and you're listening to this, I'm not saying you get all the calls, because you don't. Sometimes there are, even you guys sometimes even get calls that you're like, or don't get, like where everyone's like, that's a penalty. I feel like it happens more to Fener than to Galatasaray, despite the fact that Fener got more penalties the last 2 seasons. I feel like it happens more in Fener games, but there's definitely, there's no team who doesn't get bad calls against them, or who doesn't get, who don't have scorelines that get impacted by refs. And again, look, I'm not saying that happened in this game. I don't think it actually did. I think it was 100% our own inability to score a second, and also Uğurcan having a fantastic game. But in general, I'm talking big picture. I think if you look over 36 games in the season, I think the amount of advantage that Fener and Galatasaray get out of referee decisions going their way is significantly higher than any other team in the league. And I don't even think you can... Like, I know a lot of Fener and Galatasaray fans who even say it. They say, like, yeah, last season, especially last season, like, last season, the standards for our games were different than everyone else. Like, R and Fener. Like, yeah, I don't know if you remember, guys. Last season, it felt like these two teams are both running away with it so much, and still it felt like every game they were getting help. And I was just looking at that as a supporter of a team who's 30, 40 points behind. I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? Like, who is it this for? Like, they're literally only competing against each other. If you just call the shit down the middle, then doesn't it boil down to the same thing? Because they're both getting these favorable calls every other week. So why don't you just call the games down the middle and call them fair and square? Because I don't understand what the difference is.
It's not even like they needed it last season. It's like it was obvious they were the 2 best teams in the league. It's not even like there was any... It was just
need for one week Fener got a cheap penalty, then Galatasaray cried all week, and then the next game they got the cheap penalty, or the opposition got a soft red, or whatever, you know? Like the Kasımpaşa game last season, Fener, a few weeks before the end of the season, they get this ridiculous penalty in the 97th minute when it was square. And they get this ridiculous handball penalty where you had to look a million times to even see anything that remotely resembles a handball, which was a ridiculous bailout. And then, like, in week 32 or 33, so like 3 or 4 games before the end of the season, Galatasaray play Kasımpaşa. Minute 80, they're 3-2 down. They get a penalty. Kasımpaşa get a red card. And in the build-up, very clearly, Zaha handles the ball, so the penalty should always be called off. They miss the penalty, but Kasımpaşa, the next 15 minutes, 10 men. Galatasaray score immediately after they miss the penalty, and then they score again, they win 4-3, because they're up against 10 men. Against the Kasımpaşa side that up until that point played a very good game, and yeah, really, really, I think if it stays 11 versus 11, probably at least get a point. And you're just thinking, like, the only reason these refs are doing this is literally because these two teams are both every week crying, putting so much pressure on the federation, on the referees, and it's literally for their own little contest. Like last season especially. And I think, you know, to come full circle, the reason why I do understand why Beşiktaş fans, and I myself included, are disappointed with this result is given the scenario of this game, and that harkens back all the way to what you said at the beginning of the episode, going into this match, I think if you say, given the circumstances, Şenol Güneş becomes the coach, this is his first home game, it's Trabzon away, a point is not the end of the world. However, I think when you play against 10 men from minute 14 onwards, and you have the ability that we have, and look, our goal was brilliant. That was a master. That reminded me actually.
Shout out to Getson.
But
Getson had a brilliant game again today. Him and Svensson were my men of the match. He's fully become what I wanted him to be all along.
Yeah.
So that's
the
closest thing we could have to someone like Paul Pogba.
The goal
in his prime.
Getson is a completely different type of footballer, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the goal reminded me actually of the goal that Lugano scored against us, where we were all like, "Wow, that's a fantastic team goal." And I feel like that was almost the same goal as the Lugano goal against us, like the first one. Remember in Switzerland, and it was a brilliant goal. And I really, at that point when we scored that, I was like, "Wow, we're gonna crush these guys." And then like 10-15 minutes into the second half, I was like, "It's not gonna happen today."
Yeah, I mean, especially once I think Uğurcan made his like second kind of like world class save of the day on the back heel. I was like, oh, okay, it's just one of those freaking days. Yeah. And maybe now is time where we finally discuss the fact that Uğurcan is like his career has not panned out to the extent that everyone had expected it to, and I think it's because this man only shows up against us when it comes to the big matches for Trabzonspor. I've never seen this type of a performance against one of our rivals. And I say that granted, sure, I don't typically have the best memory of all the details the extent that you do, for example, Kaan, but can you think of a single time where it was like, oh man, Uğurcan really got them a point against our rival?
Onur Kivrak for sure. He always
Onur
he did that against Fenerbahce all the time. I mean, he literally cost them the title in 2010 when Bursaspor won it, because on the last match day they drew 1-1 in Kadıköy, and Onur had like the game of his life, and that was he made like 10 saves or something. It was insane.
He was great.
But Uğurcan, for sure, 100%. He it feels like for one reason or the other, he's always extra focused, extra motivated against us. Last season against Galatasaray, it's like he wasn't standing in the goal. I think they lost 5-0 at home, and it was like there was no goalkeeper in the goal. Not that he made massive errors. It's not like Gökhan Akkan against Fenerbahce 2 weeks ago, or. Yeah, that's probably the best example I can give of a game that ends 5-0 and where the goalkeeper literally 4 out of 5 goals are 100% on him. But it wasn't like that with Uğurcan last season against Galatasaray. But it was also like you can put any outfield player in the goal and you'd have the same result. Like, he wasn't doing shit. However, I do have to point out this season, and Trabzonspor have only played 3 games so far, but this season in the league,
he's balling out.
Uğurcan has 92.5% save rate. So right now, he has the most saves in the league per goal conceded. So he has started off the season really, really well. But I understand when Beşiktaş fans say, like, this motherfucker only plays against us, because it feels like he always has his best games against us.
And they haven't played one of our rivals
obviously,
yet, so we'll see if he carried that form. He better, honestly. Like, at this point, he freaking better, because that's so fucking annoying.
I think
it's like...
I think the main thing is our fans, and I don't blame people for it, but obviously people are still thinking, oh, last season Fener won here 2-3, Galatasaray won here 5-0. Like, Galatasaray had a super easy day in Trabzon last season, like one of the easiest matches they had all season last season. Fener obviously didn't have an easy match. They had a horribly difficult game under, scandalous circumstances, whatever you want to say. But they still won. And I think that last season, that is on fans' minds right now, where if we want to win the league this season, we have to win this game. We have to win games like this, especially okay, it's one of the more difficult on paper, one of the more difficult away games of the season. But if you are playing against 10 men for 80 minutes, you need to win. If you want to win the league against two teams that had 102 and 99 points respectively last season, you cannot afford to drop points in a game under these conditions, under these circumstances. 11 versus 11, you drop points in Trabzon, okay. 10 versus 11, you need to win it. I think that is what most people have in their heads right now, and I cannot blame them for it because I feel the same way to an extent. I don't necessarily think, because super early, it's only the fourth game, Fenerbahce have dropped 2 points in Göztepe. So, and I'm sure Galatasaray will drop points at some point, like if the referees will allow it. It will happen. But it's going to happen far less, or at least that's what it's looking like so far now, that it's going to be another situation like last season where the amount of times they drop points is going to be way below average. You know, normally...
Maybe not as bad as last season, right? Hopefully.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but like 4 games into the season and like Galatasaray have won every game, and other than the Hatay game, they haven't struggled. Fenerbahce, other than...
Fener dropped points,
yeah,
right?
only other than the Göztepe game, Fener haven't struggled either. So I do have to say, I think we have had the harder schedule so far. Samsun away, I don't think, you know... Fener obviously had Göztepe away, but we had Samsun away and we had Trabzon away. I don't think they had those games. Obviously, on paper, Rize is a difficult opponent, but we've also seen their last, 5-6 games against Beşiktaş, Fenerbahçe, Galatasaray. They conceded 32 goals, so on paper, they're one of the better sides in the league, but when it comes to performing against the big clubs, they are by far one of the weakest sides in the league, so... I think both Galatasaray and Fenerbahce have had a relatively easy schedule. Rizespor, not. I was hoping for Rizespor to be able to do something against them, but they weren't. Hatay are in a difficult situation. I think Hatay are going to be stronger going forward now with Riza Çalınbay as their coach, Abubakar, and a couple of other transfers. I think Hatay are going to be more difficult going forward. But when Galatasaray faced them, I think that was a pretty logical win, despite the fact that they almost lost and dropped points. But yeah, I think generally we have had a harder schedule so far. And again, we have one of the better teams in the league this season, this weekend, Eyüpspor. That's our next game on Sunday at home against Eyüp. And that's obviously a team that made a fantastic start to the season. They haven't lost yet. I think they have 9 points or something.
Yeah.
So, that's a team that's not an easy match, but it's at home. But it's next week, it's Fenerbahce Galatasaray, or Galatasaray Fenerbahce, I'm not 100% sure. So one of them is guaranteed to drop points, if not both of them. So at the end of the day, nothing big. Like these 2 points, it's a big shame because we could have won this, we should have won this. I think you're gonna lose points inevitably, but it stings when you look at these statistics. Like, I mean, just look at them again. Like, 75% ball possession, 3. I'm not gonna bring it
22
up, but,
shots, man. That's crazy. No, yeah, and that's why, like, that's kind of where I started the episode, right? Like the forest and the trees. Like, and the forest is, as you say, right? It's not a bad result. It's even theoretically a good one, right? Because that you're gonna lose. You're not. The odds are no one's going undefeated, so someone's gonna even lose at some point, and this could have been one of those matches theoretically on paper. Yeah. But obviously the trees aspect is that we didn't win a game that we had an extra man for much of it. Yeah. That said, and I think Yasin would agree with me, the performance itself was not a negative. And I think in a way that we tried to play our brand despite going up a man, and that we did it pretty efficiently, pretty effectively, right? Like most days, Uğurcan's going to get like one of those shots through.
The back heel,
maybe two.
The back heel for me, that reminded me of Mert's save against Switzerland. That was exactly. World class. That was a phenomenal save. That's
and a backbreaker too for us, because for us it's like we've worked so hard. We've worked in so many great, and here we have like
You meant Austria, right?
a great opportunity.
Austria. Did I say Switzerland?
Yeah, against Austria.
Yeah, Austria.
You said Switzerland.
Yeah, Austria. I was still thinking of Lugano, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, but I, look, it's a result that we can be disappointed with on the one hand, but then also like we shouldn't allow ourselves to go into a dark place because it really, we played well. We really did play pretty dang well. We created enough chances to win this game. They had a little luck on their side. They had a ref that was playing to the crowd a little too much. And, sure, like at the end of the day, they were able to park the bus. Probably the worst thing is that they scored a goal right after getting that red card,
I think
right?
that is the worst part, is that I think if we don't concede that free kick,
they probably don't
then
score.
they
That's
don't
it,
score,
yeah.
and then we will inevitably find that goal, which we did, and then we win maybe 1-0. But I think...
And then they open up probably,
Breaking
and then
news.
we can probably score 2, 3, 4, right? Like, there's a world where we just like roll out of this...
Guys,
on all cylinders, super
wait.
excited, but that's not the world we're living in, sadly.
What's up, Yasin? You said breaking news?
apparently there was an open letter published by the club against the Refs Association about the fouls. So they are taking a position.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, they should. I mean,
that's all they can do.
It's
That's
a
what
pretty
they need to do.
egregious... I mean, again, I don't think necessarily yesterday. I mean, other than the Musrati yellow, I don't remember the other. We got 3 yellows yesterday, and one was obviously for Masuaku. That one was correct. I don't
remember. Mert got one for wondering how.
Yeah.
That was a bullshit one though, because he was
he's
just
the
as
captain.
a captain,
Yeah.
speaking up for the side.
They do, and I quote, should be accepted as normal that while 1 yellow card is shown for every 4 fouls committed by our players, one of our arch rivals is shown 1 yellow card for every 8 fouls committed, and the other shows 1 yellow card for every 53 fouls committed. So they are talking about it in a more general sense.
Yeah, I mean,
1 in 53 is ridiculous.
1 in 53 is absolutely outrageous. Like, you can't even, like, if you're a Galatasaray fan, you can't justify that with a straight face. Like, they try. Don't get me wrong. They try. They're like, oh yeah, but I think it's you can't look at it like that because you have to look at every position individually. Blah blah blah blah blah. Dude, if you get 16 fouls in a game, it's not abnormal that you get 1 or 2 yellow cards. And
as
they
you
have
said,
it every game.
And like you said, Barış Alper Yilmaz, like I have not seen him play in a single match where I haven't seen at least 3 like borderline yellow cards, which they don't give somehow in Turkey, but they always do give internationally, in Europe and for the national side, which should show something to the referees in Turkey, right? Like if every other referee in the world thinks that he's doing something that deserves a yellow card, if not for something egregious, for repeated fouling, why is that in Turkey that never happened?
There's a reason why
absurd.
In 2 seasons they've had 1 red card in the league. And in Europe, in like 6 games, they have 5 reds. And look,
exactly.
I mean, obviously, look, that's a generalization. Europe is different, higher intensity, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying they should be getting red cards left, right, and center. I'm not saying that, but like, especially like, red cards aren't just always, like yesterday, like where you have those scandalous tackles that are straight reds. Sometimes it's also a matter of second yellows and stuff like that. And like Torreira, like we're talking about Barış Alper, but like Torreira, I think is the single most protected player in the league right now. He plays in a ball winning position. He's very physical. He's very much the type of player that goes in sliding. Wins a lot of balls. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he also commits a lot of fouls, and the fouls don't even get called, and then if they do get called, he doesn't get a card. And yeah, that's a systematic thing, and yeah, Galatasaray fans think that's normal. If I look at Rosier over the past years, Masuaku now, Musrati, how easily they get booked for very little.
Or Kyle Larin, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Maybe we found a little bit of a pattern here too. But
I mean,
no,
it's not a little pattern.
I hate so much that it's like the most obvious thing in the world, right? Like the way that the refs are skewed. We've put up stats, and they're thorough, right? And it's not like, oh, there's a potentially small bent that's going one way. It's vast, it's immense, and the fact, like, that point that you just brought up about Galatasaray and how they get all these cards when they're going to Europe and they get nothing when they're playing domestically, it probably hurts them when they go to Europe. Frankly, they think they can get away with certain things. They think it's normal to be getting away with certain things, probably because the players, they probably are very unaware.
Why do you think Barış Alper Yılmaz got sent off in the international break with a double yellow? Because you just don't get away with the same crap that you do in your league because you're not playing in the Turkish league. And
and for the players who are like less aware of the agendas and the subterfuge and all the stuff that's going on behind the scene, for them, their behavior is just being normalized. And they're just playing that way, and they'll do it again, because why wouldn't they? It worked last time and didn't get any calls. Do it again. Doesn't get any calls. Do it again. And then game 5, suddenly you're playing against like Malmo or someone else with an actual referee.
Yeah.
Whoops, you're gonna get those calls. And so for the players, it I wouldn't be surprised if it's had a negative impact on our coefficient, frankly, because Galatasaray has had the most talent in Turkey for years, but they keep shitting the bed in Europe, and we see this narrative like developing now. It's pretty consistent that they're getting fouls called that they're not used to, and they're sort of being unsettled. Their play is getting stopped and started the way that we experience every week, honestly, in Turkey. It's happening to them in Europe, deservedly, because they're fouling and they're playing aggressive and they're skirting that line way too frequently.
Yeah.
But again, like, that's just normal for them. So, in a way, I don't feel bad for them because they're assholes. But, that's you'd think that they would want to have real refereeing just so that a standard can be put in place for their players.
Yeah. Feels like we've talked more about our rivals in this episode than we ever have before, even than in our The Rest podcast that Yasin and I did. I think we can put a little bit of a cap, a little bit of bow on it. Before we go to the comments though, Sinan, I want to just mention, he's finally gone, people. Daniel Amartey is gone. He has taken a buyout on his contract. He has accepted 3 million euros to be paid over 10 installments in a year to basically fuck off, because he still had a 2-year contract, guaranteed wages of 1.8 million a year. The media was talking about 5.5 million over 2 years, including bonuses. I feel like that's a little misleading, because that's like, how many of those bonuses is he realistically getting if he doesn't play? Because obviously a lot of those bonuses include like appearance fees perhaps, but it depends how his contract is structured, right? Like if you get paid per appearance, that happens. Like a lot of players get like 10,000 euros per appearance, but a lot of players also, instead of that, get 4,000 euros per point. So every time you win, that's 12,000 euros. And I don't think it matters whether you're part of the squad or not. So if that's how his deal is structured, then obviously, there's a lot of extra money to be made in terms of bonuses. And then there's, of course, if you win a cup, if you win the league, whatever, qualify for Europe. There's all types of stuff that can be added to a contract. But we are finally rid of him. So that means that right on the deadline, we managed to solve our foreigner issue. We only have 14 foreigners on the books anymore. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain stayed. We obviously will try and move him on in January, and that then would open up the possibility to bring in at least one new foreigner. Maybe Jean Onana, depending on the amount of playing time he'll get in the first half of the season. Maybe he'll also be loaned in January. Then we could theoretically bring in 2 guys. But I just wanted to say that he's finally gone a little later than we all would have wanted probably. But at the end of the day, without Oxlade-Chamberlain actually leaving as well, it wouldn't have changed anything. We wouldn't have been able to bring anyone in anyway. So just wanted to mention that. Other than that, I don't think there's anything big. So Sinan, shall we get to the comments and then take it out?
Sure.
I feel like this has been one of our more negative episodes in history. Maybe not, but you know.
I'm gonna add a little negativity. I never advocate for violence, and I'm not advocating for violence. I rarely advocate for crimes to be committed, but in this case, I'd love an Ocean's 11, Mission Impossible, Star Wars Outlaws, or like Rogue One style. Someone break in to Ahmet Durçebi's office, get into his computer, transfer the funds for all the money he wasted into our account. Let's let him.
Do you think he has that much money? Do you think he has?
He better, man. And I want it stolen. I want to see some real, we don't need to be running onto the pitch and attacking anyone, but I would love someone to rappel down into ANC's office from a viaduct and steal the funds, man, because that guy.
Yeah,
let's be glad it's
bad.
over.
He's cost us.
That's true.
He's cost us a lot of money. I
over.
think at least 50 million euros down the drain, at least, and that's probably being kind.
Yeah, no, that guy is a nightmare to the club. That it's the nightmare that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the comments. Greetings from Altınkum, Turkey. That's Kartal. So I hope you made it through the whole episode, my friend. Although, on the other hand, I guess since you're on vacation, you better be making the most of it. Yusuf wrote the goat emoji. I can't imagine who that was for. We weren't talking about Necip, so I don't know who he was talking about. I know he loves calling Necip the goat. Irgendvas, hello from Turkey today. Oh,
Irgendwas mit Games.
Yeah,
that's German.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm just going. I'm abbreviating. Ergi, Kartal, big up the main man Yasin stepping in for me. So yeah, and that's where welcome to the show, Yasin, formally.
Yes.
Hakan Guneri. So it's funny, Mucci was something of a lightning rod for our fans. Some fans thought he did really well yesterday in his little stint. Some were saying he was the worst thing that's ever happened. Here we have Hakan Guneri saying Mucci almost cost us a goal with his dumb decision to cut in to dribble. I think I do remember that. I mean, he also almost scored a goal for us at the end. So, I mean, he's out of position. I think one thing we can all agree on is that Enes Mucci is not at his best when he's playing on the wing, which is fine. We need him in that 10 role anyway behind Rafa. Rafa is more effective on the wing, so we can bring him in and then slide Rafa out if Rafa's not tired. I mean, there are ways to mitigate that, but anyhow, M. Sarper wrote, it was a wrong choice Russia to play as a right wing back and Svensson became stopper. He played as, or I don't know quite what he means.
Well, I think that when they went down to 10 men,
Tarek Ozdemir
Masuaku
subscribed to the
essentially
channel.
became left winger. But
Yeah.
but Svensson was still pretty active on the right as well, so.
Yeah, I don't know if he's suggesting maybe that's what we should have done. He says Joao can't do that. I think Joao and Masuaku is a better match. By the way, thank you for the channel, loving it. So I think he means maybe playing Joao Mario on the left side with Masuaku. And there's some logic to that as far as Joao Mario does obviously like to kind of move centrally, and you could allow Masuaku to sort of flare out on the wing there. Yeah, okay. Ali Yo says, how long do you think we will be able to watch Rafa? Every match we're having a nightmare. Our league does not deserve Rafa full of butchers. Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
I mean,
I think right after you mentioned that, it's true.
Feas even said it after the game again. He already said it before. He said, we made a very big investment, and just giving these players red cards is it doesn't really fix the problem. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe then they become less. I don't understand. I am very baffled by a player like Edin Visca of all people doing this, because
I know, right?
You imagine Visca being the player he is, having played as long as
It'd be like Rashid Ghazal doing it, right? What the hell?
I mean, you kind of imagine this is a player who himself has had to endure his fair share of bad challenges to stop him, and then for him to do that, it is very mind-boggling. But look, this is the second time a player gets sent off in 4 games for a very, very, very malicious challenge on Rafa. But it's not the first time Rafa has had to endure a bad challenge. If you remember against Trabzonspor in the first game, the Dutch central defender, I forget his name, but he also had a very similar tackle from behind, and he got away with a yellow card. Like, they're doing it every game. They're doing it every game at least once. And I
mean, you get it, because how else can you stop him? But
yeah,
that's
you
against the
do
rules, man.
you do get it, but it's not okay. You're literally
No, it's not.
risking to injure the player, and this is a guy that is like, if that would
The
happen,
only way to stamp down on this and to prevent it from happening is to give a legit suspension to Edin Visca, make him miss 2 games or something like that.
Well, he will get
You know?
he will get 2 games, 100%. It is a straight red card, so that is per definition 2 games. The guy who, I forget his name, I think
But, you know, don't let them-
Guray Vural, I think, got 3 matches for his red card on
Good.
on
I was gonna say maybe 3 or 4,
Yeah.
and frankly, but yeah, don't if they like, challenge it or whatever, like they better not
Yeah.
succumb to that kind of nonsense, because this guy, that was a dirty tackle. Anyway, where are we?
We are,
We had some sound issues for a moment, and then again, Vas, 100% agree. What they did to fix last season's team was already close to a miracle to me. To be honest, can't expect much more. And I think that's we're talking about how we have some holes, but we're not too critical of the fact that we do, because we had a lot of work to do this summer, and we did a pretty damn good job. M. Starper says, he was breathing the wrong way. He's talking about when Masuaku got that phantom card, which and he's got a couple, The number again, Vas meet games. The numbers are pretty clear at this point. There is no just treatment for us, and that's what we should expect in the future. Yeah, and it is. M. Starper, maybe not told, but referees are aware of Galatasaray lobby, and subconsciously they give decisions to please them. I would say that it's probably not all that subconscious. I think it's probably at the forefront of their minds and their tongues. I have a feeling they probably talk about it. They're very aware of it. I don't even think it's that psychological, but yes, it's certainly an issue. I'll skip. Whatever. What do you think about the changes in Jedson's game? So this is again Vas again. It feels like in the last season he just couldn't score, and now he puts one after another into the net. He continues, he seems so much more confident and comfortable in his role under Gio. 100%.
I mean,
10,000%.
It's been said.
This is his best season.
Yeah,
by
it's
far.
been said a few times already that Rafa's arrival. This has been said by official club sources. Feas has said this, but maybe even somebody else. Maybe even Hussein Yücel as well. Apparently, Rafa's arrival really had a very positive impact on Jetson, and we're seeing we're seeing the results from that, obviously.
Yeah, totally. And supposedly Rafa, why he didn't leave when we were linked to selling him. So
and Jetson,
et cetera, et cetera. Carlito, welcome. A little late, but better late than never, friend. He says, not sure if it was mentioned, but Beşiktaş published an open letter to the refs. Yeah, we had literally, I think, just talked about that before you came, Carlito, Mario. No, that's not Mario. That's anyway. Atilcan Malak says, Eyüp Sultan on Sunday, red light on Thursday. Oh, Ajax, yes.
Yeah.
The red light.
The red light.
You're talking about the red light district? I don't know. That's not where I go when I visit Amsterdam. But sure.
You go to the
perhaps.
coffee shops, I'm sure.
Come on, guy. You're going to put me on blast like that? I actually prefer the Van Gogh Museum.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm just kidding. Eyüp Sultan. Anyway, Faruk Özdemir. Wow, engaging to see English live video about Beşiktaş. Many thanks, guys. I forgot.
By the way,
there was one
thanks
comment.
Faruk for subscribing to the channel he did earlier.
Oh, I didn't.
Thank you,
notice.
Faruk.
Okay.
I missed that.
Welcome.
We didn't
welcome.
get. Where's the little the bells?
It did come up, but you were
Did it?
doing something else.
Did it come up?
Oh, maybe when I went to get water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking
YK
maybe the
wrote-
Streamlabs elements were down or something, because that would explain why the chat isn't working.
Yeah, the chat had struggled.
Yeah, I
as
don't know
well.
what's up with that. Let's see. Yeah, it's still down. Yeah.
But so speaking of good English live video, it's funny because this comment by Faruk actually kind of answers a previous question, and it was someone named YK You Vasa Kartal? No, I'm kidding. Someone said, you guys are the best, but I wonder, why English language? Is there any non-Turkish speaker listener in here? Raise your hand, please. First of all, my hand is raised. Somebody else raised their hand as well. I think it was Ergenvas. And then Farouk thanks us for doing this in English. And just like, we do this, I feel like, every week now. First of all, we're trying to develop an international brand, right? We want the club we want people who are maybe not even fans to have access to information about the club, to be able to follow the club, to maybe get more fans from around the world. But yes, we also do have, of course, a huge Turkish diaspora. I am Turkish, although I don't speak the language. And so, I mean, maybe the most direct answer I can give you is that we do an English podcast about Beşiktaş because Kaan and I started the podcast, and I don't speak Turkish. So that was the only option available to me anyway.
Yeah, and I actually heard from someone recently as well, like one of our longtime listeners, that he actually sent me some questions on WhatsApp and it never really dawned on me, but he literally said that we are his main source for news on Beşiktaş. So I'm always assuming that our listeners, our viewers, I always kind of assume that they're very keyed in and they're following everything on Twitter and they know what's going on. But apparently there's people who do, and we thank you for it, who watch our show and who literally, that is their main source of any Beşiktaş information. So I don't think there's a lot of them. I don't think a lot of people who watch and who follow are people who don't speak any Turkish, but there's definitely a percentage. I don't know if it's 10%, if it's 20%. It's relatively low, I think, but there are definitely those people. But then also you have people who I know for a fact speak Turkish, but who still prefer English or another language because they've been living abroad for very long, whether they were born in Turkey or not. I think a lot of our regular listeners are people who, especially the people who are active in the chat, I think a lot of them at least are people who live in the Netherlands, who live in where does Ömer live? I think he lives in like Dubai or something.
Dubai or Oman.
Yeah, and
yeah. And look, I mean, I think when I was in Turkey last summer, I noticed how many English schools there were in Turkey. It like blew my mind, and I think it speaks to the economy in Turkey, and that I think a lot of parents of kids who are college educated, they want their kids to have a kind of better life, and that often sadly has meant them trying to like send them abroad to get work, to gain experience, to buff their resume, to go to college, whatever or just to like make a better life for themselves, right? I think that's I think a lot of people have reached that kind of defeatist point over there with the economy. But so, in a weird way, we're kind of helping to provide a service in theory, right? Like, come here, practice your English, follow your favorite team alongside. When I teach English professionally, and one of the things I always tell my students is you've got to find something you love in the language so that you have a reason to learn. And whether it's like a movie you really want to be able to understand, or a book, or comic books, or whatever the heck it is, you got to find something that you're passionate about in the language to kind of like motivate you to learn it.
Yeah.
So we're providing that too in a funny way. Anyway, we spend so much time talking about that.
Plus, usually we have Kartal on the show, which also helps you to understand Scottish.
Different dialects, that's certainly. And again, right, with Yasin, we've got the
German,
classic German accent, which I love too, by the way.
I try to hide it, but it's not easy.
I try to hide it. I don't have an accent.
Let it out.
No, I'm sorry, Yasin.
Let it out. Khalid just says he's willing to swap Mucci for Rashica, even though Mucci's not a winger. Rashica falls short against the better teams. My argument is it should be Semi on the left side, and Joao on the right.
Yes, a question. Do you know a Nazi knock joke?
No, I don't. I'm not an expert in knock jokes. Okay,
I will, but you have to imagine this. But like, Sinan, play along. Knock.
Okay. Who's there?
And I smack you in the face. We will ask the questions. I did that to Kim once, and I smacked her in the face, and she was not pleased. She was not impressed. I thought it was funny. But
And
apparently,
I'm assuming it was very gentle, right? We're not talking about
apparently I
yeah,
smacked
sure.
a little too hard.
No.
I wasn't trying to, but it's like, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, you were trying to sell the joke. I get it.
Yeah.
M Sarper, Eagles fly high, 420. Oh, I think that's because you were talking about the coffee shops in Amsterdam.
There you go.
I'm Sarper. There's lots of Turkish talking about it, but we can spread Beşiktaş globally in this way. Yeah, and that's absolutely our hope. Carlito, you guys bring it all together and have a balanced opinion without all the clickbait bullshit. I'll give you the final piece of that word that was missing. I would like to think so too. And I think now that Kaan mentions that we have someone who listens to us and gets their news from us, it makes me feel even better about the fact that we are very selective about sharing bullshit accounts and bullshit information. We're very kind of thorough, and sometimes we'll mention a rumor, but we'll say like this is probably nonsense because of, and we'll name the source. So yeah, we really do try to filter what we're giving you guys.
When I started back in the day, the Beşiktaş International website and the account, because I don't know if how many of our listeners will be aware of it, but in 2013 I started a website called Beşiktaş-International, and it was literally kind of what Haber 1903 or Orta Çizgi was, but then in English. So we wrote like all the articles in English, we translated them. The only main difference was I did not publish any articles from Fanatic, from Fotomatch, even Hürriyet, like stuff like that. Anything that was wasn't reliable, like where 95% of what these guys write is bullshit, did not come on our website. Because what's the point, right? Like that, there's no point. Like the literal intention behind the website was what the intention is behind this podcast as well. And also the Twitter account, which is now our at Beşiktaş podcast account that used to be at Beşiktaş_international, at _int. And the same thing happened there. We reported news from the quote unquote reliable sources. So like Murat Özen, Sercan Dikme for a while when he was still reliable. All the quote unquote reliable Beşiktaş sources. And we always try to filter the news we talk about already. We don't talk about Hürriyet. We don't talk about Ismail Er, or Ismail Air, as he is called. We don't talk about Fotomatch. We don't talk about Fanatic. Like there's no point of even talking about those rumors that they publish, because 99.9% of what they publish is bullshit. And then there's also,
and I don't know, Kaan, I can't speak to you personally, but do you remember? I think for me, there was a certain trauma around. I think it was we were going to get Robinho, and of course he did end up coming to Turkey.
Like
but much later on in his career.
Yeah.
Right, but we were going to get him when he was like sort of still at the height of his career, and we were all hyped up about it. And then it turned out it was like one of the first real bullshit campaigns in the Turkey,
there was
that I was aware of.
Do you remember the Diego Forlan one?
Yeah, Diego Forlan,
Ronaldinho. There were some really bad ones in the early 2010s where I think the Diego Forlan one too. Actually, that one probably had some truth to it. I think Demirören was actually trying to get him or something, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But
some of those things, we were young enough that those probably traumatized us to such an extent.
And then
exactly. That we wanted to cut the shit. We wanted to cut. We don't want to be enabling the types of people who are trying to cash in on our emotions to that extent, right? So, in fact, the opposite. We want to undercut. We want to make sure that we even call that stuff out when we can.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally, İzzet Günaydın, who I think he may have commented, but yeah, keep it coming. Previously, I mean, I feel like I've seen that name around. Anyway, he says, I used to teach English in the BUL. Maybe is that Bulgaria?
I have no idea.
The BUL? The Bull? Istanbul. Oh, Istanbul.
Oh.
Maybe in the Bull. That's cool. Actually, that's, it's funny. I've taught English in Japan, Portugal, Italy.
Mr. Worldwide.
That's right. You know how we do. But I've never taught in Turkey, and I feel like that was probably a great missed opportunity. And now I have a family, and maybe we'll like open a branch of our school there or something. But no, that would be really awesome. I would imagine to be able to work and make a living in Istanbul, and probably a nice one relative to the standard of living there. Anyway, Yeah. Anything else, guys?
I don't think so. I think that'll do it for this episode. So a couple more plugs before we go off. Guys, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're new, please subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of any upcoming episodes. Our live shows usually are on Monday and after a European match on Friday. So those are our live shows. On top of that, of course, we have extra videos dropping weekly most of the time. So this Wednesday, actually at 8 o'clock, I believe, our first of our series of European previews is going live. Yasin and I spoke to a good friend of mine, Jordi Amali, and he is a friend of mine despite the fact that he is a Galatasaray fan. But he's one of the few Galatasaray fans that I allow in my life. I don't need all that negativity, but Jordi's a good dude. He is a podcaster, and that's really how he made his name as a podcaster. And now he worked his way up by being a podcaster, and he is now on ESPN in the Netherlands, and he has his own show, taking Geld in the transfer periods, where they talk about all the transfers in the Dutch league and even beyond, Dutch players abroad and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, Jordi, great guy. He tells us everything we want to know about Ajax. That episode, or that video rather, is going live on Wednesday. So please check that out when you get the chance. If you are a Patreon member, or if you want to become a Patreon member, this is one of the many perks of being a Patreon member. If you go to patreon.com/Beşiktaş podcast and you become a Patreon member, first you can take the 7-day free trial to sample what you get in exchange for your $1.99. So you can try it out for free. So I implore all of you in the live chat, all of you watching, create a free account, check it out. If you like it, stick around for the $1.99. If you don't think it's worth your money, just cancel before you get billed, but at least check it out. Do me a favor, do all of us a favor, just check it out. All of our videos that we make, like for example, the European previews, Yasin and I recorded this European preview with Jordi last week. So that episode, as soon as we finished, went up on Patreon, so you can watch it early. I'm going to schedule my next interview with Kevin Hatchard for the Eintracht Frankfurt preview in the coming week. I think probably next week or so. And I think Yasin will join me again for that one as well, because he is very excited to talk about Eintracht Frankfurt. So that one will then also go live straight away. Whereas on YouTube, you'll have to wait an additional week or two. I'll post it roughly 10 days out, the Wednesday before the week of the match. So go check out that episode. But that's one of the perks of being a Patreon member, that you get early access to our videos. On top of that, on occasion, we also do match reviews, so to speak. We look at the match footage on Patreon. We judge the game's positions, all that kind of stuff. We do that. Extra audio podcast that is exclusive for VIP members, and behind the scenes stuff, all kinds of things for just $1.99 a month. And like I mentioned, 7-day free trial, so you can try it out completely free, no commitment. You can cancel right before your free account rolls over into a paid account, so you can just cancel, and then you can still sample all of that stuff. So check it out if you want to support us, other than following us, subscribing, and watching our stuff on YouTube. If you want to support us a little bit extra, you can do so by joining us on Patreon. Other than that,
loving this little emoji battle going. You see those hearts and little trumpets.
Oh yeah,
whoever's doing that, we appreciate you.
Definitely. So if you want to support us on Patreon, go check it out, guys. We have right now we have about 9 Patreon members. So any Patreon member that comes and joins is a win for us, and obviously just allows us to do more content for you guys in the future. Other than that, join us again next week, Monday, after the Ayub game. There will be no episode on Friday because obviously there's nothing to talk about. There's no more transfers. There's no European game this week. So next week, Monday, we will be back with our post-Ayub Spor episode. And then Friday next week, we will be there. I believe Friday next week, we'll be there to talk to you about hopefully a good result in Europe against Ajax from Amsterdam. Other than that, maybe expect the Eintracht Frankfurt episode because that game is on the 3rd of October. So that will probably be out next week or the week after. That's all I have to talk about really. Sinan and Yasin, I hope. Thank you both for joining me. And Sinan, I'm gonna let you take us out, my friend.
Well, everyone, first of all, we have our big match this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. here for me. It's gonna be we're at home.
It's Sunday, right?
Good news.
Isn't it Sunday?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sunday, 1 p.m. 6 days from now. Is that right? Sunday? No. Is that? Are you sure it's Sunday?
I think it's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
Oh, it's Sunday at 1 p.m. Oh no!
Yeah, they gotta give Galatasaray and Fenerbahce extra rest time for the European games.
I'm coaching on Sunday. I might miss this. Damn it, that sucks. Well, look, yeah, everyone else stay tuned. Watch that game against Ayub. That's a shame for me. I'll have to catch the replay. As always, this is the most important thing. Let's go Beşiktaş! Peace out, everybody.
I feel like I'm not centered.
Later, folks.
Ortada Bobo. Şimdi Bobo'nun önüne. Bobo aldı. Bobo girdi. Bobo çok babasın. Çok harikasın. Çok güzelsin. Harika. Bobo! 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. Güzel bir Yoldan gel.